Hello, and welcome to another episode of the BigTime Strength Podcast. Today I have the opportunity to interview my friend, my mentor, somebody that pours a lot of himself into other people, spending time with me, with other coaches around the area. He is the Eastern Iowa FCA Area Director, and I'm happy to welcome to the show Coach Aaron Reasland. But before we get to the show, before he kind of takes you through what it looks like to serve, I want to talk to you about our awesome sponsors that have been around, that have been helping us, supporting us to put this content out there for you. And if you will sign up right now using the code BigTime to start out here with TeamBuildr, you'll receive a free APRE program template, which works automatically within TeamBuildr. So I'm throwing that out there at the beginning just so that you guys know that BigTime code is available for you. So TeamBuildr is a leading software for high schools and colleges, providing coaches the ability to write programs online, generate over 13 reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. Guys, I'm telling you, TeamBuildr, if you're going to be on tablets, if you're going to have a software in your weight room, TeamBuildr is the way to go. And a lot of it is because of the software itself, no doubt. But even more so behind that is the customer support and just the overall willingness to help people out from Hewitt and the rest of his gang. I appreciate everything that they do for us. Do for our coaches all around the nation. The second sponsor we have today is PowerLift. PowerLift is the leading manufacturer and distributor of heavy-duty strength training equipment for collegiate and high school athletic performance centers around the world. PowerLift brings over 20 years of experience to the strength and conditioning world. All products are manufactured in their state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Jefferson, Iowa. They're proud to support all coaches, making it big time where they're at. Our last sponsor, but also he's a previous coach that's been on the show. This is a progressive speed system. Are you a strength and conditioning coach who struggles in the area of speed development? Do you wish you had a system to teach acceleration and multi-directional speed like the system you use in the weight room? Do you know a lot of speed and agility drills, but you don't really know what the drills are supposed to be teaching your athletes? And if you would like a system that allows you to plug in your favorite drills in a progressive way to allow you to slowly prepare your athletes to move better on the field or court, just head on over to evanssportperformance.com and type in BTS 50 for $50 off the progressive speed system. So thank you for Coach Jeremy Evans coming on and doing that. It is something that I think is highly impactful. We used it this summer with our athletes. I love the way that Coach has it organized. It helps me to really think of things in systems and categories and just flesh stuff out and just have that plan in place of how I'm going to progress my athletes. And so Coach Evans is doing a great job with that. We're going to get to our show. Now, just a heads up, we did record this back in the spring when we were trying to do the clinic still online, kind of changed how we're going to do it. But I'm happy to have Coach Aaron Reasland on the show. Let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the BigTime Strength Podcast / clinic. I'm excited today to bring on a friend, a mentor, somebody that's been pouring into me. I've been able to meet with him a lot. We talk a lot about strength, a lot about sports, and a lot about our faith. And one of the things that really just spurs me on about Aaron is his passion for people. He wants people to be elite. And what I mean by that is to be the best version of themselves. And he's going to go into what that looks like today, how he is influencing the people around him, how he gets to share with people around him. And more specifically, he's going to talk about our role serving as coaches. So his job, he's the Eastern Iowa FCA director. He is also a very accomplished athlete. Within high school, he was the Eastern Iowa Athlete of the Year, Cedar Rapids Gazette. He went to the University of Iowa, pitched 4 years there, a stellar standout athlete there. And then he's been a coach the rest of his time here too. So he's coached in Pella, Iowa, where there's a long tradition there. He's coached in Texas, and then he's going to share a little bit about his time in Turkey too, where he coached and was a huge part of football and discipleship there. And it's awesome to me. All of that said, he also grew up in a strength and conditioning household. His dad was a longtime strength and conditioning coach. So there's just a lot of things that draw me to Aaron's personality, how he sees the world, and how he develops relationships with athletes and coaches to spur them on to be the best version of themselves. So without further ado, this is Coach Aaron Reasland. Coach, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time talking to us today. If you want to take it away from here, you got it.
Thanks, Preston. It's a privilege to join you all today, and truly blessed to be in relationship with Preston as well. Continue to glean a ton from him, and want to talk about a few different things today. Championship cultures. As Preston mentioned, coaching is my background, both football and baseball. Been involved in strength and conditioning, but with regard to football, I've had the opportunity to coach in a title game at every school I've ever coached at. And so I've learned a lot about championship cultures and the people that have been around. Coached in state title game here in the state of Iowa at Pella High School. Had the opportunity to coach in a state title game in the state of Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas. Our championship game, the head coach across the field from us was Deion Sanders. His son was the quarterback, and an incredible group of athletes there. And we launched an international sports business, and I had the opportunity to be a head football coach overseas. And we played in 3 national title games in the country of Turkey. And so I've learned a lot through the years about championship cultures. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is servant leaders, and specifically what it looks like to serve as a leader. And so as we kind of talk about that today, it's why I'm drawn to you guys, Preston. It's why I like hanging out with you. It's why I'm excited to talk to coaches on this call. And that's because servant leaders are selfless. They're constantly sacrificing themselves for the good of others. You're constantly pouring into other people. And that's so contagious. But one of the things I want to challenge you with and talk about today is the concept is, as you pour into other people, who's pouring into you? We only have so much to pour out. And so as we continue to pour out, who's pouring into you? And so my most recent job title, as Preston shared at the beginning, I'm Eastern Iowa FCA Area Director. And so my full-time job now is the opportunity to serve coaches and athletes here in Eastern Iowa. Some of you are familiar with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. You've heard of it before. The state of Iowa in particular is broken into 5 areas. I'm one of 5 area directors across the state. I know several of you are tuning in from other states outside of Iowa, and we've got FCA there as well, area directors there as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, but at the core of my job is I get the privilege of engaging, equipping, and empowering coaches and athletes with the good news of Jesus Christ. And so today, as we talk a little bit, I want you to know a couple things. Number one, you're not alone in this profession. And in a time where we're being isolated by crisis around us and pandemic, that's a feeling that sometimes coaches can have of being isolated. You're not alone in this profession. FCA is here to walk alongside you. But we also share an incredible passion for sport. And as we share an incredible passion for sport, we also want you to know that we bring a perspective that goes beyond sport. And so if there's one thing that I could ask you to hear before we dive into the details behind serving, it's this. Your identity, your worth, your value, it cannot be defined solely by your profession. As you seek to create championship cultures, your culture can't be one where your athletes' identity, value, or worth is based on their circumstances or their accomplishments. And so as we dive in deep today to see what does it look like to truly be the best that you can be, I want to remind you that we're going to engage you in some unique ways today. I want to equip you with some tools that you can take back and use in your own servant leadership. And I want to empower you to help other people be transformed both on and off the field. In the process of that, I'd like to use the word serve to kind of guide our conversation today. The word serve, we're going to use as an acronym, and each letter is specifically going to define how do you serve. And before we dive into serve, I want to make one thing real clear. This isn't about service. Service is something you get at a restaurant. Service is something you pay for. Service is something that you expect in return. If you want to be a true servant leader, if you truly want to serve, if you want to see other people serving within your program, we need to remember the difference between serving and service. A servant leader isn't out to get something in return. A servant leader is out to give, that it would benefit those that they interact with. So it's one direction. We're not expecting something to come in return. So as we talk about that here today, I want to start with this famous quote from Bill Earl. It is one of the most famous financial quotes that's out there. It's been a long time piece of advice for people when it comes to money. If your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Let's talk about that for just a minute. If your outgo exceeds your income, if you're spending more in financial terms, if you're spending more than you're making, there's going to be a deficit. If you're spending more than you're making, then your upkeep or your maintenance of what you're doing is going to be your downfall. You're not going to be able to maintain what you have, let alone your desire to grow or increase or expand where you're working. And so what if we were to take this same principle and to apply it to sport? What if your outgo, what if what you were pouring into other people was greater than what you're receiving? And again, it goes back to the question that we started with. You are incredible servant leaders because you are pouring into other people constantly. But from FCA, let me ask you this question. Who's pouring into you? Who's filling you up? And that's part of what my relationship with Preston has been founded on. And so we want to see you as coaches have your outgo and your income be equivalent. If not, your income be even greater than your output. And then your upkeep, your maintenance, your growth, your desires to expand, they're not going to be your downfall. They're actually going to be your success. And so as we talk about those in a little bit more detail, let's dive into the acronym. And we'll lay this out and give you some really tangible things to hold on to. First and foremost, a servant leader sees the future. They see the future. Another word to help define this, and most people don't think about this when they think about serving, is you need to be able to have vision. Do you have vision? Do you have direction as a servant leader? A couple tangible takeaways for you. Number one, take some time to reflect. Where am I at right now? Where am I at? And where do I want to be? One of the best things that I've done in my career in this past year is to tell my boss that I need to build time into my schedule to reflect. Where am I at? Where do I want to go? Second, once you've had a chance to see the future, once you start to gain vision and you start to discern what direction might look like, then it's your job to communicate. It's your job to communicate, share what the future looks like, cast vision, invite other people into that. When it comes to seeing the future, you weren't hired to be a tour guide to a place you've never seen. If you want to be a servant leader, it's your job to help people see where they're going. That's what it takes to serve and to lead them in that direction. So it starts first and foremost with seeing the future. Second, a servant leader engages and develops others. One of the biggest things that stands out to me about servant leaders is they engage and develop others. And in other words, they meet people where they're at. As a servant leader, and as you seek to serve both staff and athletes, are you going to them or are you asking them to come to you? To give you a quick story about meeting people where they're at, I had a marginal quarterback. I was the offensive coordinator. He was marginal at best, this quarterback. And so we moved him to wide receiver, trying to get him some playing time. He had a few tools, and we wanted to give him an opportunity. And as we moved him to wide receiver, there was a game that we got ahead by a lot. Late in the fourth quarter, we said, hey, let's honor this kid. Let's give him a chance to get a few reps at quarterback, eat up some time. We moved him to quarterback, and his very first snap, he blows out his ACL. And so meeting this individual where they were at, we had the opportunity to engage them on a deeper level and develop them. And I'll never forget the conversations that followed in the weeks to come. I pursued this young athlete, and I invested in them, and I told them they were going to become a player coach. And if I'm honest with you, that team ended up making it to the national title game. And that individual alone was perhaps the one catalyst that got us there. rallied the troops and brought people together in a way that our other coaches wouldn't have been able to do. And the good news is this, or the crazy news is this, that's been a few years, and that individual is now the head coach of that program. And he's continuing to influence lives. And so when it comes to engaging and develop other people, I want you to remember that purpose is bigger than potential. Let me say that again. Purpose is bigger than potential. If all I looked at was my athlete's potential, some athletes are going to have value, others are going to have less value. If I look at an athlete one way today and then he gets injured, do I look at him a different way tomorrow? If we're only looking at potential, we've limited ourselves. If you're looking at purpose, there is value and worth in every single individual that is in your program. Do you have a plan? Do you have a purpose? Because you see, when you desire to see the team grow, it feeds individual growth. But it's always found in purpose more than potential. Next up, if you want to be a servant leader, you need to be reinventing continuously. Here at FCA, one of the things we talk about on a regular basis is that you were made in the image of God. You were made in his image. You actually bear his character traits. And God is a creator. He is incredible at the ways that he has created this world. And in the same way, we see that in coaches who get creative. They have opportunities to reinvent. And so when we talk about this, I want to encourage you as a servant leader to give yourself space to be creative. Give yourself space. Creativity spurs on learning. We hear about it all the time, and I'm sure you've heard about it in several other coaches' conventions, that you need to constantly be learning. A lot of you are tuned in today listening to this because you are eager to learn something new. Reinvent continuously if you want to serve your people well. Okay? In addition to that, not only does creativity spur on learning, but it allows for variation. And variations enhance learning, right? A lot of you are looking, what's another way that I could do this? What's another way that I could say this? What's another way that I can do this drill or this exercise or that exercise? A servant leader sets the tone by reinventing and providing more opportunities for people to learn. Next up, value results and relationships. Value both results and relationships. Championship cultures love to celebrate. And as we talk about celebration, let me tell you this. You should celebrate both individual results and group progress. They're both important, and let me explain why. First and foremost, most people get caught into the habit of celebrating numbers. We had this many wins. We had this many yards. We had this many turnovers. We had this many takeaways or stops. This was my max, or this was my number of reps, or this was my time. When you simply celebrate numbers, and we should celebrate numbers, it can devalue the people behind the numbers. And so one of the things that I want to strongly encourage you to do, don't just celebrate an individual's numbers, but what would it look like to actually value group goals? Rather than just having an individual max goal for squat, what if your offensive line's goal was to reach a specific max squat? What would it look like if your team, rather than just trying to say this completion percentage or this turnover rate, what if you actually made a goal that your team could all work towards together? Because when you look at results as a team, it spurs on individuals. They've got to see where they fit in the big picture so that we don't get into individual crisis. We get into some ego when it comes to results. You've got some that produce at high levels and you've got others that produce at lower levels. Every person counts. Again, if purpose is more important than potential, we need to be reminded of that in the ways that we value results. But I'd also tell you, we don't just celebrate numbers, we celebrate values. We celebrate values. Do you and your championship culture celebrate character and values? A couple of suggestions of ways to do that. Things that we did on our team. One team, we did shout outs. We would end every practice with an opportunity for shout outs. Hey team, hey staff, what do you want to shout out today? What do you want to give credit to? What did you see happen on the field that we might not have seen as a whole team? And it's a chance to shout out and say, hey, I saw this guy encourage this person. Hey, I saw this person help that person up after a play. Hey, I saw this conflict arise in the midst of the situation, and this person stepped in and deflated it so that it didn't progress. Hey, I saw this person do that. Another opportunity to celebrate values is we had another team that we would do 3 claps. And we would say, hey, I'm just so impressed and encouraged by Preston Peterson today. Hey, everybody, he modeled the values that we have in this program. Everybody, 3 claps for Preston Peterson. And it's an easy way to lift up some individuals, but it's shining a spotlight not just on results, but it's spotlighting character and values that actually can lead to results. Where are we putting our value? The last thing that I'd tell you, and I know a lot of you football coaches do Thursday evening dinners. This might sound a little bit corny, a little bit goofy, but it's actually the most inspirational team that I've ever been a part of. Every Thursday practice, the walkthrough, right? When the walkthrough ends, we ended every Thursday with what the players named, not the coaches. The players called it the Love Fest. And it was literally all the players went up into the stands and they sat down together. And we took a period of time to just, again, do the same concept of shout outs or 3 claps. But the players had a chance to speak love over their teammates, to speak love over their coaching staff, to speak love over their trainers, to speak love over their teachers and their administrators, and just share the things that they value most, the things that are having the biggest impact on them that week. And the Love Fest started pretty quiet. It was crickets when we opened up the door. But once players started talking, by the end of the year, we had to cap off our Love Fest at 30 minutes because it kept going. Players had constant praise for others. And again, it fed our championship culture. So celebrate values. Okay? Those would all be results-based things. But I also want to acknowledge that championship cultures emphasize relationships. Okay? How are you investing in relationships with your players beyond sport? And what I mean by that is, are your athletes simply X's and O's? Are they simply numbers on a spreadsheet where you're printing out and giving them goals and here's your sets and your workload for the week? Or is there genuine relationship that's there? Value relationships. Be intentional. What would it look like for you to send out a text message of encouragement to players? What would it look like to have a note card with a handwritten note hanging in your locker from a coach when you walk in on a given week, spurring you on, encouraging you? What would it look like if a freshman was as valuable as a senior? What would it look like if a starter looked no different than a non-starter in the way you engaged with your athletes? What would it look like if the manager carried equal value, the water boy or the water girl carried equal value to the starting quarterback? You see, as we look at valuing people, our relationships say it all. And so that leads into our last one. You've got to embody character and values. If you want to be a servant leader, if you want to serve and you want to lead other people and how to serve effectively, you've got to embody the character and the values that go with that. And so that starts with clearly defining character and values. We, on our teams, always called it, what does it mean to be a knight? What does it mean to be a ranger? What does it mean to be a Dutchman? You've got to define the character and the values that you desire to see. And then after that, you have to have your leadership team speak into it. This isn't just a top-down thing. If you are a servant leader, sometimes the best thing a servant leader can do is lead from behind, not from the front. What do I mean by that? What would it look like for a coach to step up and challenge his seniors, or provide a platform for a leadership council to say, we're going to define what it means to be of this character, of this value? Use your mascot. What does it mean to be a knight? Let those individuals speak into it. Let those individuals present it before the team. Obviously, check it through you. As head coaches, as assistant coaches, you should be very involved in the process, but it doesn't mean you need to be the upfront communicator of those, forcing it on other people. Let the values resonate through the entire team, that the entire team would embody it, not just one person. In addition to that, I would really challenge you as coaches, you have to model it first. You've got to model it first. And that's both in words and in actions. Talk about what's important. If you only talk about X's and O's, if you only talk about playbooks and positions, if you only talk about opponents, that doesn't embody character or values. The things that are important to you are on your lips. Is character and values on your lips on a daily basis. Talk about what's important. And I also challenge you in this. If your staff and your athletes can't see it, they can't follow it. It's not just about hearing it, it's about seeing it. You can't follow what you can't see. And so I would challenge you, you being a servant leader, you've got to set the tone. You've got to set the example. You've got to be the model. And last but not least, accountability. Accountability is key. Without accountability, there's no reinforcement of these character traits and values. And so who's holding you accountable to your core character values? Who's holding you accountable? Sure, you might be the top dog and you might be holding everybody else accountable, but who's holding you accountable? FCA staff would love to step in and help hold you accountable, help you discern what that might look like. But it's also important, how are you holding your staff and athletes accountable? You see, there's this common statement, what you allow, you encourage. Let me say that again. What you allow, you encourage. If you allow the swearing to continue, if you allow vulgar language or vulgar conversations or vulgar locker room speak, if you allow people to talk about the opposite gender or other races or other sports with a negativity, if you allow that to happen in the locker room, on the field, in the hallways of a school, you're actually encouraging it. And so how are you holding your staff and your athletes accountable? You have to define who is holding accountable, and you have to define how you're going to hold them accountable. Put your leadership council, put your senior leaders in a position to help oversee these things, to help hold accountable to. Put your staff, empower others to be a part of this process. But make sure it's clear who is being held accountable and how they're going to be held accountable. And then consistency is key. If this seems to be important to you today, but there's no reference of it tomorrow, no accountability to it tomorrow, it's undermined the very foundation that you're trying to stand on. Be consistent. We want you to know that FCA has been placing character coaches in schools for years. And so if you'd be interested in having somebody help coach you, help consider what character and values could look like on your team, contact us. Let us know. We'd love to help consider what it would look like for your team, for your school to have a character coach. And so to redo kind of the overview here, if you want to serve to the best of your ability and you want to see other people in your sphere of influence, serving others, it starts with seeing the future. It requires you to engage and to develop others. It can't just be about you. You've got to reinvent continuously. The same old thing isn't the same old thing. Be new, be innovative. Value results, but don't put them at the expense of relationships. Value both. And last but not least, make sure you embody character and values. Put those at the forefront. Lead with that first, because that's the foundation that goes beyond winning and losing. And so last but not least, we would love Eastern Iowa FCA to get you connected. Couple things that we would love to introduce to you. Number one, we are in the process of launching virtual coaches huddles. If you're interested in connecting, we have 2 calls that are going to be starting per week where people can sign on via Zoom and they can interact with other coaches as well as FCA staff. You can process life together. You can spend some time in prayer, in consideration of what God might be asking you to do. And we look to the Word of God for clear guidance and direction. Consider joining us for one of our virtual huddles. Second, we have sport-specific huddles. Some of you already have FCA on your campus, but do you have an FCA huddle for your team? What would it look like to have a sport-specific huddle, a football huddle, or a strength and conditioning huddle at your school? We'd love to help you get that started. And last but not least, a lot of you are already familiar with this. This is kind of the old hat, but multi-sport huddles. If your school doesn't have a multi-sport huddle, we want to engage, equip, and empower as many coaches and athletes as we can. Let's get a huddle started on your campus soon. Contact us. You can reach out to me specifically via email. My personal email is listed below here. We'd love for you to go on our website at easterniowafca.org. There's ways for you to get connected specifically there as well. Obviously, you've always got the opportunity in the platform to reach out to Preston, and he can put you in contact with us as well. But we're extremely grateful for what you do in your profession. We want to put it in perspective in a way that goes beyond sport, that you can continue to serve your student athletes, your staff, your campus, and your community. So thanks for having me here today.
Hey, Aaron, before you go, I just want to make sure that people understand, doesn't matter where you're at. If you're in New York or California, you can still reach out to Aaron. He'll help you out and get you connected with the people that you need to be connected with in your area. Also with this virtual coaching huddles, man, there are no borders. So I'm excited about that. I'm sure he'd be interested in having people on from wherever, man, like that would be fun. Or if it's still going to be by area, he'll help you out with that. But that's something that has profoundly impacted me, is just to be in community with coaches and people that are leading us in a way, like within our character, within our values, and holding us as coaches accountable, I think is such a big deal, because we're always in the position of leading. We're always in the position of serving other people. But how are we going to be served? How are we going to have our outgo end up being less than our income? And I really want to make sure that we are being filled up with stuff that is valuable, stuff that actually holds meaning. Because when the games are over, when the practices are done, and when you are actually away from your athletes, take this scenario right now where we're all stuck at home, how bad does it hurt not to be around your team? And it's not because you won or lost games with those people. It's because the relationships and the eternal value that we have, not within our sport, but in who we are, and something bigger than ourselves. So, Aaron, I truly appreciate you coming on. What you went through, all that, my page is full of notes, and I want to call you back and and kind of go through all this stuff. So I appreciate you, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And I pray that each of you are encouraged, spurred on. Again, you're not alone. Let's continue to do this together.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron.